Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a particularly intriguing reason to listen to the Four Seasons by Vivaldi yet again. Now, one of the problems with these pieces that get played to death, let's face it, is that once you've heard them for the 30 trillionth time and collected your 500th recording of them, when are you going to play them? And which ones are you going to play? And which ones are you going to listen to? And why are you going to listen to it? The music is lovely. There's no question about that. It's delightful, delicious, marvelous music. And the Four Seasons had its day in the sun, shall we say, in the 70s and 80s, and particularly when the period instrument movement got going, and everybody had to record the Four Seasons right away so we could see what it sounded like and on authentic instruments, and some of those performances are just marvelous. I mean, they really are splendid. But it's still the Four Seasons, right? It's the movie with Carol Burnett and Alan Alda and all those people. It's the Four Seasons. There really should have been more seasons. Maybe if there were 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 or and of course, as we know, the Four Seasons is just the first 4 concertos out of a set of 12, and people don't pay much attention to the rest of the set. They just listen to the Four Seasons. But I get it. They are so tuneful and fun and really accurate, programmatically accurate. They're delightful, delicious works. And so in that tradition, you are going to have to maintain, anyone who's going to do them, however they're going to do them, has to maintain their deliciousness. You can't lose that basic charm and grace and tunefulness. And I mean, there have been so many horrible, awful, terrible reimaginings and rearrangements of the Four Seasons. But this is definitely one of the best I've come across. This comes from pianist Jeffrey Biegel. Now, Jeffrey Biegel is a wonderful pianist who has made a niche for himself, doing all kinds of contemporary music and unusual music, and this is such a smart project that he's done here. He has simply transcribed the Four Seasons for piano, and very faithfully, very, very faithfully, in the tradition, he says, of Bach, which I think is a perfectly valid thing to do. As you may know, Bach transcribed several Vivaldi concerti for solo keyboard, and quite sensitively, and they work quite well that way, just like Bach's Italian concerto, which is a concerto for solo keyboard. I mean, goodness knows Bach knew how to do it. And, Biegel knows how to do it too. It's just delightful. It's on Naxos here. And you get 2 other concertos too, not transcribed by Biegel. They're done by Andrew Gentili, the Mandolin Concerto in C major, RV 425, and the incredibly famous Lute Concerto in D major, RV 93. I'm going to play you a little bit of that. You know that Lute Concerto? It's the one that's got that gorgeous slow movement that sounds a little bit like a slowed down version of the famous Dvorak piano humoresque. It's quite similar. Here it is. Let's listen to it. Let's just listen to it. Love this tune. See how nicely that works? It's absolutely beautiful. But the Four Seasons, of course, is the main event, the entree, the mandolin and lute concerti are hors d'oeuvres, and wonderful hors d'oeuvres, or encores, or desserts, because they come after the Four Seasons. I want to play you the slow movement of Spring. Now, as you know, the slow movement of Spring is very, very graphic. Each of these concertos is the musical embodiment of lines in a a sonnet. That's the word, sonnet, a poem. Let's make it easy for us, for me anyway. A poem about the season in question. And in this particular movement, you have a hot spring day, a lazy spring day, and a winding violin melody on top. And in the middle, you have a dog. And the dog is going woof, 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 woof. Sometimes woof, woof, and sometimes woof, woof. But it's a woof. And so the pianist has to recreate 3 levels of tone, which is rather easy to do with the string orchestra, because you've got the body of strings creating the general accompaniment, and then you've got the solo viola doing the woof woof, and then you've got the solo violin with the tune on top. But here it's all on the keyboard. And Biegel does an excellent job with his woofs and his melody and the whole thing. It just works quite beautifully on the piano, while also giving a slightly different slant on it because of the uniformity of timbre that you get using a single keyboard for the whole thing. So it has a freshness and a difference, but it somehow comes out sounding a little bit more polyphonic, whereas I think the actual original is a bit more pictorial and literal. So anyway, here, let's listen to the slow movement of Spring. One of the things that an arrangement like this also does is that it really allows us to rehear the original I think, with renewed appreciation for Vivaldi's genius, because he's using a teeny tiny little string orchestra, but he gets an amazing amount of color out of it. And it's very idiomatic writing for the strings. Especially, I'm going to play now the finale of Winter, which has the winter storms blowing around. And, there's tremolos and all kinds of coloristic devices that you'd think don't translate terribly well to the piano. But in fact, they do. And they make quite a virtuosic and exciting finale to the whole set. It works very beautifully the way Biegel plays it, particularly because he doesn't make any concessions to the keyboard in, for example, like slowing things down or making them less flashy than they're supposed to sound. They're quite brilliant in these arrangements, and you'll hear for yourself. Listen to the finale of Winter. Isn't that fun? I happen to love transcriptions from one medium to the other if they're good. I'm not talking about, horrible literal exercises like that ghastly Cristofori 1-2 apart Beethoven Eroica or something that's just an abomination. A transcription involves reimagining the original in legitimate terms for the new medium. So, for example, if you did the Eroica for a piano trio like Hummel or one of those guys did for a domestic performance at home, that's great. That's interesting because because the arranger has actually given some thought to how you're going to play the work in this new format and captures all of the essential elements. They just sound different. And that's great. That's totally different from doing some sort of horrifying, bastardized, abominable, grotesque, mauling and Dadaist, damage to the original work. And this is one of those, as Bach's arrangements were. This is not one of those, pardon me, as Bach's arrangements were not. It is a very skillful arrangement of the original for the keyboard, played with absolute perfect technical finesse and artistic insight, and I recommend it very, very strongly, especially if you are sick to death of hearing your 50 recordings of the Four Seasons and want something that's going to make you listen to the music anew and appreciate some of its subtleties and its genius all over again. Jeffrey Biegel accomplishes that, and there is no greater compliment. I can pay it. So it's on Naxos, as I said, the Four Seasons for solo keyboard, a wonderful project, beautifully realized. Thanks for listening, folks. Keep on listening. Take care.